You're listening to Coffee with Innovate Finance, where we speak with experts from the industry on the changing face of financial services and the future of fintech and financial innovation. I am Rashi Pandey, Head of Membership and Growth at Innovate Finance, and I'm very pleased to welcome Kat Cloud, who's the UK Public Policy Lead at Plaid. So we have spoken to Plaid before, and if for all of you that you remember, Plaid is the data network that powers the tools millions of people rely on to live a healthier financial life. And this is what we'll be talking about today. So thank you so much for joining us, Kat.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Super excited to be here.
It is really cool. So can you tell us more about your background and your role at Plaid?
Yeah. So at Plaid, as you lovely introduced me, I am the public policy lead for the UK. What does that actually mean? So essentially, I am the kind of middleman between working and engaging with the regulators, working and engaging with the UK government, just get a better sense of not just open banking, but fintech in general. Because that's actually what Plaid really cares about. Like, yes, we're obviously operating as an open banking provider, but that's not just what we're looking at. We're looking at broader to that, looking at like kind of fintech in general. So I'm the one that sits there and is engaging with the regulators, responding to consultations, going to different lobbying events, speaking to them just to get a better of what's the future roadmap for the UK in terms of fintech. And then a lot of times I'll take that information and bring it in-house, especially like working with the product team. So partnering with them to just get a better sense of how, like, what do we want to create kind of over the next 6, 12, 18 months? Like, what is our roadmap as a product team, as a company? So kind of bringing those insights from like the way government's feeling about crypto or the way that government's feeling about digital ID, things like that, and then bringing it internally. And then it also goes the other way. So taking kind of, if we're having issues with a product or if we're having issues with open banking, connections with banks, things like that, taking that information and bringing it back to the regulator and saying, here's a challenge we're facing. Can you help us overcome it? What can we do to make this a better environment? So it's a very like helpful relationship in that we're kind of being the middleman between both sides, like internal and external. And there's just a lot of knowledge sharing. But before that, so it'll be 3 years at Plaid soon, so very exciting. Prior to that, I was at the Financial Conduct Authority, where I worked in the payments policy team, specifically looking at open banking and when we had first kind of started thinking about open finance. So I haven't gone too far, but it's been a very exciting kind of journey through a career looking at kind of being on the regulated side, being the regulator, actually writing the rules and guidance, and then going and actually doing them in practice and seeing what works and what doesn't actually work.
I was gonna say you're making policy sound so exciting, which is really good to hear. But I love the fact that you said, about knowledge sharing and that Plaid looks at, the fintech ecosystem as a whole. And I remember when I spoke to Keith Gross, your head of UK as well, he said something very similar. So it's lovely to see that your ethos has remained that way.
Yeah.
So, moving on to, exactly what's happening not only within the ecosystem, but the economic uncertainty in general. And as we're moving further away from the height of the pandemic and facing new economic challenges with your, inflation and market volatility, what trends are you observing in terms of digital finance?
Yeah, actually, pretty good timing. Last month, we released our latest version of the FinTech Effect, which is a annual report that we publish looking at consumers and their digital financial like adoption both in the US and in the UK. So it's a pretty useful tool to just compare and contrast both from just like US year on year and UK year on year, but also just looking at how US consumers and UK consumers interact in different ways. We actually found that an overwhelming majority of people in the UK use fintech. Like we've actually found that 84% of the respondents, like specifically looking at the UK, are using fintech to manage their money. And I think that's something that we're really seeing as a big takeaway as we kind of look at this cost of living crisis. We're looking at kind of the economic and political climate changing. And unfortunately, a lot of consumers are now facing financial stress and having to respond and react to that. So I think the biggest thing that we're really seeing is the uptake of consumers who are turning to fintech to say, okay, how do I actually better manage my finances? How do I get as much information as I can possibly get to really understand and make better decisions? Because if you look at it now, like now compared to 5 years ago, it's so much easier for you as a consumer who may have a large amount of like financial understanding, or even a consumer who doesn't necessarily really understand finances. You can download an app on your phone and you can have so much information just at your fingertips that it really allows you to better actually like plan. So we actually one of my favorite stats from that report is that 83% of consumers cite the cost of living crisis as their main concern for kind of like the next calendar year. And it's just really sad to see that. But then it's really good that they then actually feel confident that they can then turn to fintech and turn to financial services as a way to actually overcome that stress and actually be able to not necessarily solve the cost of living crisis, but relieve some of the stress that comes with this at the point in time and be like, okay, I can understand how my finances are going to work. Yes, things are going to be tight over the next couple of months, but I feel a little bit better and a little less stressed because I have my current account balance on my mobile app and it's in a budgeted format for me. It's in a pie chart, everything like that you can really get from fintech to really help change and empower consumers, especially in a time like what we're currently going through.
Wow, you gave some great numbers there, and I'm very happy to hear that the adoption rate, continuously keeps increasing. The last I checked, it was 70-ish, and now it's 80+%. That's great to hear. And like you spoke about, empowering customers. So why do you think people are preferring fintech solutions over traditional financial services?
I think it's because we're now starting to see consumers they've always trusted their banks. We're seeing it kind of shift more towards, and not shift, I'd say more extending it to trusting fintech because they're seeing the benefits and they're seeing the power of the new innovations that you can get as a consumer. And I'm not just talking about open banking, it's fintech in general that you can get and the benefits you receive. So I think like one of the big things or like one of the big opportunities we have and one of the reasons why consumers are turning to it is because of the enhanced trust like around fintech. And yes, obviously we can go into the really technical stuff of strong customer authentication, but what you need to know as like a consumer is just that it is actually secure. Because I know a lot of people, there's that initial concern with fintech that it's not your traditional bank, so therefore it can't be as secure. But that's actually, we've proven that that's wrong. And consumers today, like with the adoption rate continuing to go up, that trust and security is there. So I'd say that consumers are no longer as nervous as they were in the past because they can see the benefits just by downloading an app on their phone. And they also then know the security is there, that if they do share their data, if they do use these products and services, that they're protected and they're actually going to be better off than a consumer who is not using this.
It's pretty much like they have everything at their fingertips, right? So they can
Yes,
see that things are happening in real time.
exactly.
That's pretty cool. So how else can fintechs help in these economic challenges that we're facing right now?
I think some of the big ways is, and I think one of the big differences is, and it's not obviously the same, but the last time that we were in a financial crisis, we didn't have, as we're like kind of calling it like fintech, we didn't have that as much as we have it today. So now we're seeing like these founders really step up to that challenge and trying to help people navigate the climate. So like some examples that we've actually currently done is like Bloom Money. They really focus on helping to encourage savings, both just from because like we all have the beauty of like we see it with Monzo where you just kind of slide a few pennies like over to like a rainy day account, but the Bloom Money is really focused on kind of encouraging savings and really building up those saving balances in as many different ways as humanly possible. We're also seeing like another one of our customers is Quirk Money, where they actually personalize your financial management. So they're really focused on kind of how do we make it easy for you as a consumer, not just to move the pennies into a rainy day account, but actually manage your finances. So I think that's the biggest concern that and challenge that we have at the moment is that financial services are incredibly technical. And it can be like I've been working in fintech for almost 9 years at this point, and there's still things and like there's still products and there's still things that are being developed. And I'm like, I had no idea about that. That is really, really cool, but I had no idea. So I think the biggest challenge that we have at the moment is still overcoming that initial gap of how do we create it so you as a consumer can really understand everything you have available to you for financial services that can actually really help you. Be it getting your personal pension, be it how do I better manage my mortgage and how do I renew my mortgage and get a better rate for myself, especially given the current environment with the way that interest rates are going. Like, what is the best savings account for me? Or is it better for me to save money? Or should I actually go and like try and get a new credit card or try and go down that route? Like, really trying to overcome that initial barrier of just education, but actually having the education be digestible and easy for people to understand and actually make a decision, say, yep, this seems like a good product for me to start looking into and potentially getting. So I think that's the one thing that like fintech has been really trying to get better at. And like that's why I really like talking about some of our customers like Quirk Money who are like that's their whole focus is to overcome that and say, what can you, Cat Cloud, what products do we think are best for you? And how would we give you like the right guidance and advice to make it so it's an easy decision for you to decide if this is something you actually want to do?
I think education is key here, isn't it? That fintechs have done really well and continue to, fingers crossed. And I love the fact that you brought up savings as well, because sometimes people don't realize, right, that it's like compounding interest, and people
Yeah.
don't realize that, when you do put it aside, it does build up in the end. And you spoke about the fact that, and it just really made me laugh, that there's new technologies that keep coming up in fintech. And sometimes, I mean, at Innovate Finance as well, we're like, what? That's a new vertical now. But of course, one of them has been open banking, and the world, I would say, has pretty much embraced it. We keep on meeting our colleagues from, all over the world, from South America to Asia.
Mhm.
We all look at the UK when it comes to, open banking and how to implement them, the way we have in the UK. So how do you think open banking has changed the industry?
I think it's really kind of, and then we've touched on it a little bit throughout, is it's really put the consumer back at the heart of financial services. It's something that like we hadn't seen in a while because as we all know, like especially like only in the UK, we went that extra mile when the Competition and Markets Authority did their investigation into retail banking and found like products and services that have been developed for banking in the past, they weren't really geared towards actually helping a consumer. Whereas now we've completely flipped it. And now you as a consumer, you're back in control. If you don't want to share your information, you don't have to. But if you do, there's so many things that it can unlock where you can become significantly better off by having a better understanding. But again, you ultimately as a consumer are the one that is in control. So I feel like it's helped people and it's helped consumers just kind of take that step back and be like, okay, do I actually want to do this? Does this actually work for me? What are the benefits that it's going to give to me? Like it really is forcing not just banks, but it's also forcing fintechs to be like, okay, how can we actually help you as a consumer? How do we really change financial services and not just like banks versus fintechs? It's together. How do we change financial services so they actually work better? So it's really changed like open banking has kind of really it's made everyone switch their focus and start looking at that and giving people and consumers control of their finances so that there's value added to it. And it's not just, okay, yeah, I have a bank account. It's been with Barclays for 20 years. Like you actually sit there and think and say, okay, well, I have a Barclays account. I also have this other account and I have this other account. And then you can explain to your friends the reasons why you have those other accounts and what benefits you're getting from having those other accounts. So it's encouraging those conversations. And it's really encouraging consumers to think about what do I want from my bank? What do I want from my fintech app? And are they giving it to me? Yes or no?
You're right. I think open banking has really made people think as well a lot about the different products that are out there, and that they don't have to use one app for everything, right? You can split it up for different
Yeah.
reasons that works for you. And that's so true. And with the fact that open banking has progressed so well in the UK, and it's consumers are adopting it, etc. At Plaid, what have you seen as the biggest shifts? And how do you think consumer behavior has changed in terms of the payments and transactions that you're seeing now?
I think so. We're really seeing this shift now away from, well, not away from, but like kind of building on open banking, and we're seeing consumers have benefited from open banking, benefited from the like increased data that they can get, or like a new payment option being available to them at checkout. Like we've seen the benefits of that. And now the big thing we're really seeing is, why can't I see my pension data? Why can't I see my mortgage data? So we're starting to see that consumers want that, as we're calling it, open finance. They want to move to that next phase because they're ready. They trust open banking. They've seen the benefits of it. And now, and I'm one of those consumers, I'll be honest. If I could see all my information in one place, that would help me significantly as I start to plan for the future. Or as I think about buying my first home, what do I need to do in order to do that? Like, is it best that I get a help to buy ISA, or do I put it into a savings account, or should I actually get like a personal pension and maybe instead be putting it into that? What about a lifetime ISA? Like different things for me to be thinking about. Whereas right now with open banking, the biggest limitation is I can't even see my savings accounts. I can really only see my current account, which is incredibly useful for day-to-day spending. But for long-term financial planning, which is what consumers are now kind of pushing for and what they want, especially in a cost of living crisis, that's where we're falling short. And that's where, with the help of the consumer demand, but also with the help of like industry, so banks and TPPs and pension providers and mortgage providers, we need to start putting the pressure on the regulator and on government to kind of push us to that next level and say, yep, this is the legislative vehicle that we're going to have, and we're going to allow for open finance to happen so we can actually start really moving on to the next phase of innovation and starting to think, okay, other areas of financial services, what needs to change there? Where can we put consumers back in control and kind of get them to start talking about, oh, I do have a personal pension. Oh, well, why do you have a personal pension? Or, oh, I just refinanced my mortgage. Oh, how did you do that? What was the process like? Like those are the types of conversations we need to start being able to have. And unless we get open finance, those conversations are not going to happen.
So you have suggested a clear value in building, open finance and exploring that further. For a lot of our listeners, if you can perhaps elaborate the basic difference between, open banking and open finance, that would be great.
Yeah, no, of course. So open banking is just unlocking the data for your current account or your credit card, and that's all you can see. So it's very much your day-to-day kind of spending, your here and now, whereas open finance is going broader than that. It's building on the concept of open banking, so the concept of unlocking data, but now this is looking at your mortgage data, your insurance data, your investments data. So it's going like that's why we call it open finance, because it's actually opening the data available for all of your financial services products and putting it into an easily readable format so you as a consumer can make better decisions about your long-term financial goals, but also your short-term financial goals.
That was perfectly, described, I must say. So, that pretty much comes to, building, financial well-being for everyone in a way, right? So, what do you think are the pathways of, financial well-being, and how is Plaid filling the financial gap?
Yeah. So I think, especially given the current environment we're in, is really kind of understanding what is it that consumers need? What is it that we can provide as a company? Because consumers do not download a Plaid app. So they're not necessarily going to know that it is that Plaid providing the information. Like we work with a lot of our clients and a lot of partners so that way we can provide and actually power the financial products that they then learn and get the benefit really from. So we think both kind of from the consumer perspective, because we are, even though we're not consumer facing, we do care about consumers. It's part of our mission as a company to really make sure we can actually empower them with the data we provide. So we look at it from that angle and say, okay, what type of data does a customer need based on a range of different financial services positions? Someone who is financially struggling, someone who is actually very affluent and very well off, they need different types of products and they need different types of information. So we really kind of break it down from that and say, so consumer A in this situation, what of our products do we think is most useful for them? are those products still working? And then we kind of go to that next level and say, okay, of our partners, what are our partners using this information for? Are there any partners or areas that we specifically want to target? And that's why, like, when we do have like the clients, like I mentioned earlier, like Quirk Money and Bloom Money, we really like to work with those because they're actually answering kind of that consumer need. And they're saying, yep, okay, Plaid, we're going to use XYZ of your products and we're going to use them in this way. And it's going to help consumers. So it's like a win-win for us, obviously, but then it's also a win-win for the consumer because it does kind of give them the ability to make better decisions.
I think the ability to make better decisions is key here, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. That's like the main, I'd say
Yeah.
it's the main benefit of fintech in general, but
Yeah.
specifically open banking and open finance is breaking down those barriers and actually allowing consumers to be at the heart of financial services and be able to decide their future.
Yeah, I completely agree. So where do you think are the gaps and opportunities for people to live, healthier financial lives? And what more can fintechs do? What do you think?
I think we can definitely continue to start like really pressuring and putting and like asking for open finance to become a
Yeah,
reality
yeah,
because so far we haven't seen it. We have talked numerous times about the benefits of it. Everyone agrees that there's benefits of it and that we should be doing it. But until we kind of get that legislative vehicle and we get that regulatory, like the regulator behind it, we're not going to see anything. So we do actually have a bill in Parliament. It's the Data Protection and Digital Innovation Bill, which has a section on smart data and open finance and kind of unlocking that kind of next phase of innovation. But it's been paused. So I think a big thing and kind of like my one big call for anyone listening to this is to start like thinking about that bill. Start writing to your MP and saying, okay, we need this today. We need, especially in the cost of living crisis, we need to kind of to push this forward. We need to be able to unlock this type of information and allow the secure sharing of it. Because then one of the risks of not doing and not pushing for this bill is that you're going to get companies that will start to access the information, but it won't have that security that comes with it being regulation. So you're going to have businesses going kind of the side doorway to get the data. And it's something that we don't want to do. It's not as secure. There's not as many benefits around it. So it's really pushing, kind of putting that pressure on government and the regulator to get this bill through and actually start writing the regulation and allow this to happen.
Thank you very much, Kat. That was great and very, very helpful to know. Keeping customers at the heart of everything is what Plaid is doing. And I've personally actually seen your growth, especially in the UK. And it makes me super happy as well, that you guys have grown, you guys are doing so great. So before I let you go, any other exciting new updates from your end that we should be aware about?
Yeah, no, actually a few. Because we are
Wow.
obviously getting to like that Christmas period. So moving to the next stage. So I think for us, like this year, we really kind of expanded our reach deeper into continental Europe. So we actually added coverage to 12 new countries across the EU. That was a very big win for us as a team and very exciting to see like the growth we've seen in the UK. We're going further and kind of pushing that growth into Europe. But for next year, we're focusing on evolving from an open banking network and kind of solving more of our customers' problems by going down the road and pushing. I want to, in a year's time, hopefully even less, be able to come on and be like, Plaid is an open finance. Like we do open finance. We're no longer just doing open banking. We've made the progress to the next stage. And kind of we're carrying that like specifically on the policy side is working with government to get the data protection digital innovation bill back on the table, back into the committee stage, people discussing it, tabling amendments, really pushing kind of making sure open finance happens for consumers. That's just kind of a little taste of everything that we have planned. There's a lot more coming up. 2023 is going to be a very exciting and big year for not just Plaid, but everyone who is involved in open finance, open banking, and fintech.
That sounds very exciting. And as you know, we are here to support you in your, open banking and furthering to open finance conversations on the government level and regulation, etc. as well. Thank you so much, Kat, for speaking with us today.
Thank you for having me. No, it's been very fun, very exciting.
Yeah, it has been really cool. And it's so nice to see, the fact that you guys are working with so many of, the smaller startups as well as scale ups, as well as high growths, banks. You know what? More power to you and to the team in Plaid. And we cannot wait to see what next year brings for you guys. So thank you very much for coming to our podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you to our audience for listening and tuning into Coffee with Innovate Finance. So do look out for upcoming episodes and follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn for more on our events and programs, and also for Plaid's updates and what's happening at their end. So as always, until next time, please take very good care of yourselves.